Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to NewsCafe. I'm Terence Ray, and I'll be your host for tonight. Tonight, we'll have a very interesting show for you. We'll be talking about the judicial challenges on St. Martin, and that will be what we'll have for you tonight. Before these words from our sponsor. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We have tonight a very interesting guest. Our guest tonight is a prominent St. Martin figure. He's been very active in the civic societies. He's a long-standing, high-ranking government civil servant. And for the past years, he has also been very active in politics to the point that he was elected into parliament in 2020. And he unfortunately had to step down as he was then immediately suspended after entering parliament. This year, unfortunately, he was not successful in regaining his seat in parliament, but we have with us tonight to talk about the challenges in the judicial system here on St. Martin. We have none other than Mr. Claudius Buncamper. Welcome, Mr. Buncamper.
Thank you very much, Terence. It's a pleasure being on your program. I had hoped that, the topic would have been a more nicer topic to debate and discuss. But I think, when you carry these type of challenges that I personally encountered in not one, but two cases spanning over approximately 14 years thus far. The first case, 12 years, and I was fully acquitted at Supreme Court. And the second case now is at Supreme Court. And, as we go along tonight, we'll discuss it. But I think it is important that people understand that not everything that shines is gold. And sometimes that can be a very misleading something because we place trust in an institution, and those that are controlling the institution don't reflect the trust that you put in them. And I think, to start off this discussion, I think it's very important that we take the example that just occurred in the Netherlands, where a Chief Justice in The Hague has been suspended now indefinitely because he tampered with 43 appeal cases where the people were convicted without even the other judges being part and parcel of it. And his only explanation he could give was he was saving the state money. But justice can't be about money, because if justice is about money, then you start to get on very slippery ice. And, this is what I encountered in my judicial challenges in St. Martin. In the beginning, a colleague of yours even wrote and someday ago there, you had him on the show about media, and he said because of his media investigative things, he brought down Maria Buncamper. He didn't bring down Maria Buncamper. Politics brought down Maria Buncamper because
Right.
she was going to be sacked in politics, not because he wrote a story that wasn't true. Because at the end of the day, we didn't owe the government $2.3 million. We owed them nothing. The company, Echo Green, owed 2,000 guilders. So after a 12-year battle, we were told, or my wife was told, as she was the one that did the administration, the company owes 2,000 guilders.
And
Other
that's
companies,
important. That's
you know,
important indeed to highlight as we enter this discussion, that we are not here tonight to talk about whether or not you are guilty or anything of that
no,
nature.
exactly.
We are here tonight indeed, and I want the viewers to understand that clearly, that we are here to discuss the challenges that you have faced going
Correct.
into the judicial system and being a suspect and being treated as such, and indeed what you encountered in that process that brought it to the extent that we have to have this debate tonight on this show to let the viewers know that indeed we place a lot of trust in our judicial system, and we indeed do, because at the end of the day, our judicial system is one of the best around the world, and we have to recognize that fact. But I also like the viewers to know that at the end of the day, we are dealing with human beings, and human beings in all sectors of our society can make mistakes. You and I both know that very well. Human beings can make mistakes. And the point is that when certain mistakes are made, we have to highlight those mistakes because we want for them to do better. We want for things to be corrected going forward. We want this not to be happening again. And in light of that, I would not like to be in your shoes, Mr. Buncamper. And I'll call you Claudius. Now and then I might call you Bunks. Everyone knows you.
That's okay. That's not an issue.
But for our viewers, now and then I'll throw in Mr. Buncamper, even though Mr. Buncamper was someone that we all looked up to and revered here in the island. Even your mom, as a matter of fact. I just have to let the viewers know that you're not someone that I met yesterday. So let's be clear about that, because they might say, Terrence, you're biased. At the end of the day, we all grew up here together on St. Martin. We have had a lot of debates, and the reason that I organized this show, because you and I have had countless phone calls discussing the legal challenges that you were facing as an individual and what you were up against, and I did my research, and I'd like the readers to understand that this show is not something that we are doing lightly. I spent countless hours going through documents, going through court documents, going through lawyer statements, going through all these court official documents. And it's a very tedious process. And I know for a fact that it's just the tip of the iceberg in terms of the amount of documents involved in this case.
That's right.
But what I want for the readers and the viewers to understand is that we want to highlight certain issues that at the end of the day, we have to make sure that these things do not happen again. Because at the end of the day, what we're looking at is the human rights aspects in your court case and where you have had these challenges. I know indeed this whole thing started many years ago. I think you mentioned 14 years ago, starting with a media report in a newspaper, a daily newspaper, that I at one point was linked to as a general manager in the last year, that the company existed before Hurricane Irma destroyed the newspaper company, unfortunately. And indeed, I continued with the news online on a new platform called stmartinnews.com. So because of the fact that the media played a role in this whole instigation of cases against your person and indeed your wife for that matter, but I feel that it is also imperative for the same media on St. Martin to give light and give attention to your challenges, because it's not an easy road that you have gone through. And imagine you have to be fighting court cases for 14 years. I would not like to be in your shoes. I told you the other day, if I was had to go through the thing that you go through and went through, I might have flipped out a long time. But you're the big man with broad shoulders. And trust me, that plays a key role in the fact that you're here today, still going strong in this battle. And I'd like for you, Nini, to tell us from the beginning, going up to the process that you've faced, the amount of cases, what is the result of that? Because I believe of the charges, let's say 9 charges, 8 were dropped or you were exonerated, and then now you're facing one last case, and indeed the next step is the Supreme Court in Holland.
Yeah. Well, there are 2 cases. The first case was the Bumo case, and in that one there were 8 charges from money laundering, criminal organization, tax fraud, you name it. And I was acquitted of all 8. Mm-hmm. And then came the second case. So as this case was terminating in appeals here in St. Martin in 2018, they already notified us, we come for you again with a new case. So I knew before appeals was finished that they were already busy with another case, because it is remarkable that in June 2018, they started a so-called investigation, and in July, 18 confidential informants came forward and told the TBO all kind of stories. And in November, they created a summons to investigate 4 people and a company. They followed us, they tapped us.
Oh.
Terrence, at the end of the day, they interrogated a lot of people. And this started in December 2018. In February 2020, I was elected to Parliament. Up to that time, they charged me. The minute I was elected, lo and behold, in March, they said they have enough. They're going to ask for permission to prosecute me. And that started in May. So when they said they asked permission, they have to go to the appellate court. And they asked permission, we told them, what are the charges? Bribery. Okay, fine. Can I see something? You're telling me you're charging. Oh, no. We can't show you no documents, because if we do that, you might hurt, or they have to protect the witnesses. They said this is
again, and this is the first point of this challenge that I call challenging the judicial system, where you are confronted with a charge and you do not know what a charge exactly entails.
Well, they tell you it's bribery. They tell you it's bribery.
But that could be anything.
That's it.
Maybe you get sweetie down the road by a shop.
You see, they said it was the landfill, and it's bribery. So they asked me to hear me in 2019, and I told them, fine, no problem. I went in. I asked them, is my wife involved? Yes, she is. I said, well, if that is the case, then I'm going to use my right not to incriminate myself or my wife. They said, oh, you're using your right to remain silent. I said, maybe you don't understand the judicial system as good as I do, but my lawyer was sitting there. So if you are asking me something where you are implicating my wife, I have the right to remain silent.
Now, that's also important for the viewers to understand that you are claiming marital privilege, spousal privilege.
Correct.
That you cannot make statements to implicate your wife, your own wife, your own spouse,
your own children, anything like that.
Correct.
So they even went as far as threatening me that they'll go after my children if I don't want to talk. They're going to charge them too.
Wow.
So I just laughed at them a little while. Afterwards, I realized that this was becoming a mockery, a joke. Mm-hmm. But as we went to courts, that's when it became clear that this was going to be a fight that I don't know how it was going to end eventually. They refused us documents. From the 5,000 documents they turned over to me, when they got permission to charge me in 2021 May, from those 5,000, we got them then. Before that, we had no documents that we could get. My lawyer requested on numerous occasions, give us redacted documents, give us something, let us know what this is about. How can we defend ourselves in front of the appellate court when we have no documents. I'll give an example. Remember MP Emmanuel, they went into the house and all kind of things, and then they had to go to the appellate court to ask to charge him. His lawyer had all the documents. They didn't get permission. By me, I had zero. Listen, not even a front page. Nothing. Not one document. Now, the law doesn't allow that.
Right.
The law doesn't allow that. So in our
again, this is the point that I'd like the readers to understand carefully, that we are not pointing fingers at persons. We are looking at the process. And
exactly.
In a case like this, due process has to be followed. Whether you're guilty or not, due process has to be followed, and that has to be respected at all times.
A fair trial was not granted, was not given, because I was blindfolded and my hands were tied behind my back, and I'm put into the ring with Mike Tyson, and I should try to win that fight. That's how I went to courts. I was blindsided from every angle. Letters were being sent to the courts, and they forgot to CC us. So we would reach in a hearing, and they're talking about something. We tell them, but what were you talking about?
Right.
Oh, we sent that to you. No, you did not. Show me, send me the email now that you sent it to me. Oops, we forgot. It was hanging in the box. Those type of stupidities. But it creates frustration because you know that they will do anything in their power to ensure that they can prosecute you. And that's why they have the saying, absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Absolutely.
And that's the challenges I started to run into a wall. My lawyer was being charged. They would take him to the Bar Association and press charges that he didn't comply with the law. Why you putting pressure on a man? To me, you're trying.
Right.
I am the suspect. So why harass him a lawyer?
And I would also again like to reiterate that what Mr. Buncamper is saying here, I have verified with court documents, with email correspondence. I've had copies of all these type of correspondences going back and forth between lawyers and judges. So I can indeed confirm what he's saying here tonight.
Terence, the only reason I took this show is because you had agreed to read the documents so that nobody will come and say, oh, Buncamper just blowing hot smoke up.
Exactly.
I wanted somebody that can read Dutch and comprehend it properly.
Correct.
And not be biased, because politically you on the other side than me. We know each other, and I have respect for your journalism skills, because you will call a spade, no matter which side of the fence it belongs to. And that was important for me in this case. Because, Terence, a judge hears both parties in the proceedings. Based on the evidence, he makes a judgment.
Right.
A judge is not there to make evidence. A judge cannot say, oh, but I hear this, or I heard that, and the parties involved said, but we never said that, Your Honor. And he says, I don't care. I heard it. So now that became evidence.
And that is critical, that when I heard this story that you told me, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up, because indeed what you're saying, you're expecting a judge to be an impartial figure in this whole process. Literally, everybody is bringing, the prosecutor's office, the defense is bringing their case, their pleas to the court, and the judge has to have an impartial view on everything and render a verdict based on the evidence presented. When I read, I verify that by seeing indeed the court documents and the lawyers' complaints and pleas on this.
That's why I also sent you all the emails.
Right.
Where the judge himself even said, no matter what they said, I can't use it against you, Buncamper, but it is you read my verdict. And the verdict is exactly that. And then I said to myself, where are we going? Where are we going with this? Because no matter how much my lawyer and the last lawyer I had, I really want to, to put on a pedestal Mrs. Peggy Ann Brandon. The lady did a hell of a job. She had the judge.
Just to be clear, how many lawyers you've had in this case?
Two. In first instance, I had Mr. Bloom, And in appeal, I had Mrs. Brandon. I wanted both of them, but both of them didn't have the time to do it. So Mrs. Brandon then took the lead on it and continued it. But the defense was meticulous, and the defense was based on evidentiary paperwork, not hearsay, like was the verdict in first instance, because there were 13 statements between the two other suspects that were managing the landfill. In not one statement was ever said, we gave Buncamper money. Was never said. The judge said, oh, but I hear one of them say it. Now, Terrence, you got to put things in perspective.
That one.
I asked the judge before we started, I want to tape the proceedings. And the man went ballistic. Oh, absolutely not. And the reason he got in so, most probably, is because they knew what they were going to do. Because in September of 2021, the 27th, the 28th, and the 29th, all suspects and witnesses were heard. All. And we only got the suspect statements back on the 12th of November, which is the Friday, at 6:15 in the afternoon. And trial starts Monday morning, November 15th, 9 a.m.
Another critical aspect of this case, the short notice that you don't have any time to prepare. It's mind-boggling that you are confronted and faced with these challenges, that on such short, over a span of a weekend, you are presented with evidence at the very last, like I said, 6:15 in the afternoon, in the evening, and then to prepare for a court case Monday morning. It's mind-boggling.
Where the statements are fully riddled with mistakes, innuendos, because they say things that you said, and you say, I never said this. And now it becomes, oh, no, listen, that's what we noted, so that's what you said. That's when you start to play a dangerous game of fraud. I telling you what you said, and I'm going to give you this 3 months later and tell you that's what's going to stand in courts.
I call that circular reasoning. In Dutch, you call it circular redenatie. You create evidence via a hearsay situation, and then that evidence is introduced as evidence in a case going forward. Again, another situation, you would tend to think that this should not be happening in a proceeding of this nature, of this impact.
Exactly. I mean, Terrence, listen, evidence is evidence. When my case had 3 components: landfill, Kimsha, and the Stell Post. And for example, in the Stell Post, they said
that has to do with accounting and budget system of government, right?
The lady is correct. Government systems, government procedures.
Right.
What we were doing for over 15, 20 years, we were using the Stell Post to do works that were not sewage related, but we would pay them with a sewage miscellaneous post. This went through minister after minister after minister, and before that, through the commissioners in country island territory St. Martin. This ain't nothing new. Terrence, they reach by me. Mind you, after I approve something, it goes to the financial controller, it goes to the SG, it goes to the finance department, everything. When this came up in first instance, some documents were not handed in. So in appeal, we made sure, asked permission to have her heard. We had the affidavits, but we asked permission to hear them. So the police, the TBO, heard the lady in Curacao, heard the SG of Finance in St. Martin. All of them gave evidence to the fact that what I did was not out of the ordinary. I followed government procedures.
Right.
Now, Terrence, there's a law. I think it's Article 124, I'm not sure, that states if a civil servant execute an order on behalf of his superiors, right or wrong, you cannot punish him.
Right.
Yet you're telling me I falsified the bills, and by paying the bills, I committed fraud. Now, I do work in public works yard. I am rebuilding the garage, rebuilding the office. I use the miscellaneous post from sewage. This is government work, Oh, I falsified the bill, and because I paid it, I committed fraud. This is where they went. The Lions Club was a shelter. It was built with Sede Antilla money as a shelter.
Right.
We asked permission to expand it so that because we had the No Kidding with Our Kids Foundation, used to use the whole downstairs, we said, we want to create shelter upstairs so we can move up everything so that when they go into the shelters, they don't damage things. Permission was granted. They turned around and said, oh, I own the building. That's how they started off. I own the building. Because they don't do no work. They just go on Facebook, pick up a bunch of things, and then say A, B, C, D, and charge you. Charge you with it. And then tell you, because you put on, instead of the Cement Lions Club, you put on sewage plant, you falsified it. But if that's the procedure to prevent budget amendments, how in God's name you reach by me and all the others that approved it, ain't get the problem. You see, Terrence, these are challenges when you become a target. Because I am a target.
Right.
Target because my mouth is big. I ain't afraid to call you what you are. I ain't afraid to call you out. And remember when they got
do you think that your venture into politics is what also triggered you being a target for?
I think they came at me in 2018 on the landfill, and they never expected me to win. So while they were doing the investigation, they know there wasn't going no place for that. That wasn't going to go no place. They would eventually drop it. The minute I got into politics or elected, remember the first thing I bounced upon in Parliament was the draft Criminal Procedure Code. And I slammed into that, and I tell them, there ain't no way in hell we're going to approve this, giving the Public Prosecutor's Office carte blanche to become judge and jury. Remember that fight? It was Rolando Bryson, myself. They kicked down Rolando doors too.
Okay, then.
Remember, look at it carefully. Political prosecution is one thing. Political persecution is a whole different thing, because the rules are thrown out the window. And that's the problem I had. They had hoped that by now they'd have bleeded me financially to death, so I couldn't pay for a lawyer, and I would give up and I would just go to jail. Because that's what it is. That is the clash justice that exists. If you have enough money to fight your case, they have untapped resources. Untapped. And at the end of the day, they lose, and what? Country paying anyway. When I won my first case, the country had to pay me back my cost. But even in that cost issue, I'm going to show you something. You're charged for 8 counts, and you're convicted for 1. You get community service, but they will not pay you back for the other 7 that you won. Because you were convicted for that 1, you get back nothing. That is not fair. Because they can trump up charges and go at you. And this thing about, they don't trump up charges. Yes, they do. They always pick certain charges that carry a certain amount of jail time to justify an arrest and a vote and hold you in pre-detention. That's how that works. They themselves, you see, people that work in the justice system like to drink too. And when they drink too much, the lips get loose. Loose lips, and you hear a lot of stories. But when you hear it out of their own mouths,
you
don't know who you be, then things change. And nowadays with the phones, people sit down beside you and they're taping your whole conversation, guiding you into a direction, and you don't even know that, and you're saying
Exactly.
And this is what happens too often. A lot of things are said, maybe not intentionally, but they are said. And when you put them in line with other things that are happening, you see a different landscape in front of you. And that's why when you said, let's talk about the challenges, I said, our system has a lot of challenges. I believe in justice. I honestly still believe in justice.
Absolutely.
Do I believe in all those that are executing justice in St. Martin? Absolutely not. Some of them have shown me, and that was when I got my verdict in appeal. Everybody knew that I was bold because I was out there telling them I'm going to be acquitted. Because, Terrence, there was nothing in the files that could have justified me being
prosecuted,
convicted. There was nothing. There was no evidence to that effect.
Right.
When we presented our case, they told us this case has so much new evidence, and they really need 3 months, not 3 weeks or 6 weeks, 3 months, the time to review everything and do everything. Terrence, and you come back after 3 months and you tell me the same verdict will stand, and all the work that the lawyers did was washed away with a half a page on explanation. And then so the whole bribery, everything stood, and they used to justify the decision, or the minister who was sitting there then said that you were pushing for Roberto and Sons. And I said, but wait, I gave advice. We did a tender. I helped evaluate. I wrote the advice. There were 2 people that participated. One tendered 2.3 million, one tendered 3.8 million. Our budget was 2.4. So we gave the 2.3 million the job. Not the boys from Sucker Garden. The personnel they had in there was okay. They went to Google using the FBI to get all my emails. They got everything. They saw everything. It was 5 pages or 6 pages. Absolutely no damning evidence. Nothing to say, because I told them, yes, I spoke to them. I spoke to the people. As long as there's no tender published or approved, I can talk to anybody about anything. And that's what I did. The tender only was approved in October, went into effect in November. So November we tendered. I spoke to these people in August and September. Before the tender, they said, oh, I fixed the tender for them. I gave an advice on where that tender should be awarded. That advice was scrutinized by the financial controller. She agreed. She signed off. The Secretary General, the SG, reviewed it and signed off on it. It went to finance. The financial controllers in the finance department reviewed it, approved it. Went to the Minister of Romy. He checked it, approved it. Went to the Minister of Finance. He checked it, approved it. Went to the Council of Ministers. They checked it, approved it. And then it went to the governor. The governor's cabinet went through that thing with a fine-tooth comb and approved it, signed the LB, and sent it back for the minister, who then signed the contract with the contractor. But Buncamper gave him the tender. Buncamper gave him the contract. That's what I was nailed for. Because I gave him the contract, I demanded a bribe in return. But nobody testified that he gave me money. Nobody.
And that is critical, because I've made my review based on 3 points about analyzing the procedural errors that have taken place in this process, and importantly, witness statements, how that came about and how they have dealt with that process, and indeed the third aspect, the government procedures. Now, this is what we were just talking about. We were talking about basically the government procedures, and there's a whole process for that. You are but a cog in that government apparatus. So indeed, it is quite surprising that in all that process and all those different layers of checks and balances and review process and due diligence that is being done, indeed, as far as going to the governor's cabinet and having a review process take place at that level as well. It is indeed amazing then that indeed, like you said, you then are the only one, sole one, getting processed for this situation. And it begs a question, how does that rhyme with government process? You know, at the end of the day, we tend to do things a certain way here in St. Martin, and government procedures sometimes are backed by law, rules and regulations, backed by policies, grounded by even ministerial decrees. But at the end of the day, government procedures are grounded in laws. So if there's a process and that process has been followed, how in God's name, excuse my amazement, how is it that possible that you, just the one person, get prosecuted for this aspect?
Terence, you know, we always talk about trias politicas. But the question you really have to ask yourself is, does it exist? Because when a judge sits on the seat of government and tell governments, I don't really care what you're doing, I don't agree, so I am going to go this way. Because basically, the whole procedure of the tender was thrown through the window. We don't care what the governor thought or what the council of ministers thought or the minister. We don't care. Who the hell are they? We as judge say, you give it. Conversation over. Because I am the absolute power. Look back at what happened with domain lands. The law states that the minister, at his sole discretion, gives land to who he wants. And then came Vineyard Heights. So a court case where mistakes were made and blah, blah, blah. And what does the judge do? The judge uses a high court's arrest, the Detum arrest, and says, yes, but when good governance is not safeguarded, then we have to creep in. And we go hold the notaries accountable too. Because had she not gone there, the notaries would have continued signing off notarial deeds. But the minute they threatened the notaries said, oh, we ain't going there. We ain't signing nothing no more.
Right.
This is when the judicial arm in trias politicas pushes out the executive branch and sits on that seat.
You know, and this is what makes this process so complex, because of the fact that we're dealing with legal issues. And indeed, the common man out there, hearing your case, hearing you talk tonight about these issues, it might be something that goes a little bit above the heads of the average Joe and Jane out there. So it's important to let people know that at the end of the day, what we are talking about tonight is a very complex matter. Complex to the point that indeed, when judges get frustrated with the way certain things are being done in government, this is where you see indeed the human being in that judge plays a role in his frustration and in his decision-making process. So it's important that people understand that. You know, it's about, we always say, well, we do things a certain way, and then it becomes common practice, and then somewhere along the line, we think that's the way it's supposed to be. You know? And this is a case indeed when it comes to the government issuance of land, long lease land. You see the same process play out. But at the end of the day, your case is indicative and should be looked at carefully by all civil servants working in the government apparatus. At the end of the day, your decision-making process in that whole cog of bureaucracy has to be scrutinized not only by your counterparts, but indeed by those above, right and left, center, behind you. Because if this is the case that you get prosecuted for something that you signed off on, while there are countless others above you who had more authority than you and also signed up on that, it begs the question that what is then the position of the civil servant? How is the position of the civil servant protected if going forward that you can be exposed to these type of liabilities?
You know, Terence, it is when you refuse to understand the process. I signed an advice.
Right.
I didn't sign a contract. I didn't make a decision. I gave an advice to my superiors from SG right up to minister, governor, whoever. This is what we found, and this is how we advise it. Now, in this case, Terence, it is so disturbing because when it had reached the minister had questions. And the minister drafted questions and he sent them back. And the SG from Vromi on December 15th, 2015, answered the minister and said, the advice stands. I am not changing this advice. This is the SG talking. Yet you reached by me to nail me. Because the minister said, oh, I was pushing for the boys. So when you hear people talk, so I should have given it to the one for 3.8 million. And then they said, Bunks take a cut because that's 1.5 million guilders more. You see, it is as if you can't give work to local black boys because then you're going to kneel. Remember, I was also the bad boy when I took the 4 big garbage contracts and chop them up into 8 garbage contracts and 13 district cleaning contracts back in 2012 because I said share the wealth.
Right.
I was a bad boy. The same ministers those days came to chop off my head. But I showed the rationale with the decision making. You see, and if I couldn't show the rationale, Terence, I could understand them having a case. But we showed, my lawyer defended, she showed that when we did work for third parties, they are what we call bron documented, which are
source documents,
which would show where the money went.
Right.
When they reach in the case, all source documents gone. Gone. There's none. We brought in some. The judge said, where you get these? I said, they're irrelevant. It ain't relevant where I get them. It is relevant that we got them.
Right. And that they exist. And that they exist.
I went back to look for some of them because remember those boys went in there pick up all the documents. A lot of things don't exist no more. You see, this is the problem. But again, in a formal defense, when I can show that you have systematically broken the procedures that must be adhered to if you want to safeguard a fair trial, then you can't tell me. Oh, that's why I didn't get excited with the verdict anymore. It did cost me the election because the Daily Sensation ran the article a day before elections and I can't get my seat and quoted the Electoral Council for saying so, while I have in my WhatsApps from the chair lady of the Electoral Council that she never said that because they don't have a position on that. But you know, it was a political stunt scam that was orchestrated. I'm okay with it. It's politics. It's part of the game that is played when you want to destroy people. I always say the media is the fourth power, and they shouldn't be part of that game. Otherwise, they are just as bad as the players.
Right.
And if you are talking about integrity and transparency and all these things, and you are not that, and that's why my appreciation to you, Terence, for bringing me into this show, but agreeing to read the documents and peruse them to understand it. When I say something, I am not lying. I am not bending the truth. I am now finally talking about it in a show where the confirmation of the documents is done. So it gives it more merit. People can't say, oh, Buncamper was on Terence show lying. No, Terence Ray not only read the documents, Terence Ray has the documents.
Indeed, I can concur on that. And that's why, again, as I said, it's important that the viewers understand what is happening here. You know, I'm not on a witch hunt. Some of my legal advisors say, boy, you sure you want to go there with that show? You sure you want to do that, boy? But at the end of the day, you know, we should not be fearful of indeed highlighting certain aspects in our society, even if it is in the judicial system, because at the end of the day, like I said, we are all human beings and human beings make mistakes. The important part is that when a mistake is made, that it's owned up to and corrective measures are implemented. This is what, you know, we are looking for in this situation. At the end of the day, you have a reputation, they look at you as a bad boy, the big bunks, the big bad wolf. So at the end of the day, people say, boy, it gotta be true. If they say so and they went after bunks, it gotta be true. But we have to be mindful of that. Reputation is one thing, but following procedure and giving due diligence to a case of this nature, that's more important than confirming whether he or she is a bad boy, a bad girl, or whatever. Because at the end of the day, it is today for you, tomorrow for me. And this is what we have to be careful about.
I'll tell you this. Have I made mistakes in my life? Yes, I have. I've made a lot of mistakes. I'm not a hypocrite.
You and I both, brother.
I'm not a hypocrite to say, oh, I am holier than thou. I don't do those things. I hate liars and hypocrites. I have made mistakes. And I've manned up to my mistakes. On my job, I've made mistakes. And me and my SG, the former SG of Romy, we have had our dances. Me and Joseph Dollison, my former boss, I still call him boss man today. We have had our dances. Because I am a fella, I ain't follow my mouth. I ain't afraid to pull up my mouth. And sometimes I'm wrong when I do that. And I will apologize afterwards. But words can have lasting effects. And some people say, oh, Buncamper too bold. He too forward. But I'll tell you one thing. Ask any politician that ever worked with me. They'll tell you two things about Buncamper. He always answers his phone and he will get the job done.
Right.
And in getting the job done, sometimes you cut corners because I can't wait for somebody to give me permission if I know the place is going to flood out and people will get hurt and they're going to lose their home or they're going to lose their materials. I can open the road. And if that means that I broke procedure, you want to punish me, I understand. That's why today you're seeing the places that's flood because no civil servant wants to take a chance. Because like you said it, if they could come at people like me who had listen, I worked nearly 25 years in government. I never had problems. Sure, we have arguments. But when it comes to hurricane, cleanups, running the show, I don't back down. I don't run, go home, go sleep, or no. When the landfill is on fire, because they give you 2 million guilders, 2.5 million guilders to fix the landfill. Today they're spending 6-7 million on the landfill. But we get 2.5 million and then, we cutting deal. We taking bribe. If it costs you 3 million and you bid 2.5 million, they can't be paying bribes because they ain't got no money. But you see, the problem for me was it was nearly as if I was targeted. And I always try to figure out who did I piss off. Because I can remember when we had Hurricane Lewis.
Martin, who called you mash? I
can remember when we had Hurricane Lewis, Irma. They had a Dutch group was here from Zembla.
Right.
And go back and look at that interview. And the guy says to me, but how is it possible that a man that has a conviction like you has so much power to be able to be cleaning up and having all these trucks running? And I said to him, a conviction by whom? By a man that just wanted to show me he was the boss? Because it wasn't based on fact. Because that same conviction was overturned in the Supreme Court.
Right, exactly.
And you just, you sit back afterwards and you think back on it and you smile and you say that the media that came from Holland was more interested in how I had that power instead of how we could clean up this place and get food to the people. Shows you the message they came to bring back. And I always say, the media can be your friend, but can also be your enemy. I don't believe that the media is hounding people. Sure, they don't like everybody. So there is rougher on some than on the others. But in the judicial system, you can't have that.
It shouldn't be.
Regardless of who's sitting across you, even if it is your friend or your brother, if you're the judge, you have to deal with that person as a suspect, but under the pretext, I am innocent until proven guilty, not guilty until proven innocent, because that's the problem we have here. We are guilty and we are tried very often by the media. You have trial by media. And
Tribal media, yes, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's what I was
and that's
referring
something
to.
I'm very cognizant of, indeed, of the power that we have as a media.
Sure.
And that's why I do not, you know, tread rashly into this business because we have to be very careful of what we're doing as a media and the power that we wield. Of course, as a writer, as a critical person, I throw my jobs now and then at certain people, especially politicians, because at the end of the day, you're in a position you should be able to carry that weight on your shoulders because when people look at what you're doing as a politician, you have to make sure that you're across the board, that you do things the right way. And if you, like you said, sometimes want to cut corners, you should and can be called out on that. Sometimes people say, but Terrence, you're too critical, you're too harsh. No, at the end of the day, you have to be mindful of the position that you're fulfilling in society as a politician, as a person in certain position, as a minister or as an MP. You wield a certain level of power, and you have to be very mindful how you execute that power. And that's where the media comes into play.
In politics, I always tell them, it's an honorable position if you execute it honorably. And when I was an MP, I did my homework before every meeting. I would not go up there and talk if I didn't have it factually based. My talk shows became the talk of the town because every Monday when I went on, it was factual. It wasn't no melee hearsay, school children corner. No. These are the facts. This is what I read: the Dutch news, I read the Antillean news, so Curacao, Aruba, and I read St. Martin's news. And then sometimes you even have to look globally because, like, just a little in between, nobody ain't talking about the fuel clause, something that's destroying this country right now. I wish the judges had come and said, well, listen, it can't be more than 30 cents. But they can't do that. You understand? Again, sometimes you wish that the absolute power could give an absolute rendition or a decision to a problem that you have. But when you're dealing with justice, you got to be open-minded within the law. And like how they said, the gewoonte wet didn't just establish. So the law of habit is a law that is applied because the same way, if I let you live on my piece of land for 10 years, 15 years unobstructed, you could clean it.
You could clean the land on your own.
Because it is gewoonte, it was habit. If you leave people keep crossing your land unobstructed, there's no sign that says private property, you can't go and close it down afterwards. They're going to tell you no. That is now, they have a rest for overpart. You see, and these are the type of things that, as a civil servant, very often we get caught up in things. And then we believe you wield in power. You don't wield no power, you're there to serve the people. Exactly. And I always said as a civil servant, irregardless to what color you wave, or which generation you come from, or what gender you be, if you have a right to it, you can get it. So I used to have problems with my political parties sometimes because they feel you got to do things for their people first. But that wasn't my style. My mother didn't bring me up that way. But to go back into where we were, the same thing I expect in justice, that you look at it through a clear set of glasses and not a tarnished set of glasses that you came here with and Buncamper is a bad boy. We need to lock him up. Because that's how I feel. I agree
with you. Indeed, the perception is strong and to the point of being indeed a misconception by those coming from abroad and then seeing certain things happen in certain way here in St. Martin. We always say in St. Martin, it's not what you know, it's who you know. I can attest to the fact that when certain things have to be done, and I'm talking about bush need to be cleared in the streets and the roads, people will pick up the phone and call Buncamper. So at the end of the day, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And because of that, of course, it might be perceived that you have a lot of power in St. Martin. Everybody knows Bunks, everybody call Bunks to get things done. But at the end of the day, this is how we do things in St. Martin. It's a small community, and I want to take this opportunity also to go into a short break. We've been talking for quite a while now, and I want to take a short break, and then we'll be back after a word from our sponsor.
slogan of stmartinnews.com is news, views, reviews, and interviews. stmartinnews.com is always on point with editorials and opinion pieces. stmartinnews.com is the best in political analysis, court cases, and investigative reporting. We tell it like it is. stmartinnews.com is the only news site to bring the news directly to you via email. Register today at stmartinnews.com for your free subscription to the daily newsletter and read the news on your smartphone, tablet, and desktop computer. Because we do things and view things differently at stmartinnews.com, support our work and buy a year subscription for only $75 per year. stmartinnews.com for news, views, reviews, and interviews. Subscribe today. We will bring you the news faster than Facebook.
Welcome back, viewers. We're here in a show with Mr. Claudius Buncamper. We're talking about the challenges facing the judicial system in St. Martin. At this point in the segment of the show, we invite viewers to pose questions. And I want to reiterate that they do pose questions. Keep your questions short and to the point. We don't have really time to read and analyze comments. So we welcome the viewers to pose questions, and then indeed I will pose these questions to Mr. Buncamper, and he can give his answer to the viewers directly as well. At this stage, I'd like to recap the show so far. We've been talking about procedural errors in the two major court cases that Mr. Buncamper has been going through. His first case was the Bumo case, and then after the Ruby case, I believe. We also talk about, and we're going to go into that aspect shortly, witness statements, because we more talked about government procedures and the consequences thereof for a civil servant of your rank within government as a head of a department who had to give advice on a tender process. And we see the consequences thereof, despite the fact that there were many layers above you who had the power and authority to sign off on that tender process. However, because of your advice, you are the one that got prosecuted in that aspect. Another aspect that, I know. That's one thing about Mr. Buncamper we can appreciate. He's a very passionate person, and that's why we all like to enjoy his show on the Monday mornings because, like he said, he always presents facts, and I can concur because I know for a fact that he often also contact me to get certain back articles from my archives to correspond or to complement or to confirm certain aspects of his show. So I can indeed attest to that fact that he's a man that does his homework and does not go through these things lightly. We also talked about witness statements. So that aspect I want to discuss during this part of the show while we see if we have any questions coming from our viewers. I know you wanted to touch on an aspect that I just was talking about in terms of the government procedure, but after that I want to go into the witness statement and how the judicial system dealt with statements made by witnesses and what the interpretation of those statements were in terms of what the judge himself considered to be statements and what he considered, or what we, from the evidence presented in the court documents, considered to be nothing but hearsay. But I want to give you the opportunity to respond to the issue.
No, I just wanted to highlight something. You spoke about government procedures and all those things. And you can remember there was a whole to do with the garbage collection tenders. And
Right.
the ombudsman highlighted in her report how a tender is done and where the responsibility lies.
Right.
That meant nothing to the courts. Here we are talking about a high council of a country.
Correct.
Telling you how it has to be done. And you just wipe your backside with it. That's all I can say. It shows the disrespect of the judicial system to the high council system of our country. And I say that, and that's why I was smiling when you were talking about it, because it isn't about the civil servant. A civil servant doesn't make a decision for millions. SGs, department heads, like I had a the authority because of the disaster relief or the disaster management that I used to have to do on a daily basis because a rain can fall. I had up to $5,000 I was able to put into work in collaboration and discussion with my SG. I could give the instruction. Above that, we got to go to the minister. So how do I give a 2.3 million guilder tender for 2 years? So 4.6 million. I gave it. I advised them where it should go.
Right.
The ombudsman explained in detail how that works.
Exactly.
I would have hoped that the appellate court would have said, my God, here is a stick, here's a piece from a high council in the country. The ombudsman's office is stating bam, bam, bam. If that has no validity, then you ask yourself, do we have trias politicas?
Correct.
Because
good question.
It can't be. It just doesn't add up.
Yeah.
But I think we should go over
and that is where we see witnesses, statements made on record are simply discarded, which is quite strange if you want to be going through a process, a fair process, with proper due diligence, and you have these witness statements. We've seen in the records and the documents, that witnesses were just simply brushed aside. How is that possible? How is that possible? That part I don't understand.
Terrence, if I had understanding for the reasoning, I would be able to take the judge to task. All I can tell you is, in first instance, there was a serious miscarriage of justice. And in appeal, they used the appeal case to cover up the miscarriage of justice in first instance by saying, we're going to leave it the same way it was, and all the evidence, we're going to brush it off because the minister say you were pushing to give it to them, so you give it to them. And Miss Kaylee, because she wasn't here in 2013, she could not have done investigative reviewing of the documents and the payments with the Stell Post.
And just for the viewers' comprehension, the reference person you just mentioned, Mrs. Kaylee, was the finance controller within Bromley.
Of the ministry. Right. Finance controller of the ministry that came in 2016. So because the financial controller of the ministry before her became the chef de cabinet from the minister of Romy. So when the minister went up, he went up with the financial controller. So when the questions came back, the SG was the one that says, hey, this is good. So if you all have questions, these are the answers. I can't change the advice.
Right.
So when the new lady came in, she, on behalf of the SG of Finance, who gave her the instruction, please review all these bills and check others also to see what went down.
Right.
And that testimony was just simply pushed aside and said, well, since she wasn't there from 2013, how could she know? And I'm saying to myself, how
when
can
you bring an auditor, it's not the same when you bring an auditor to audit the books.
How can they do that when we're not here? Exactly. But this is written. I mean, you have the verdict. You can read it. This is a joke. Listen, when you put this on paper, then you start to ask yourself the fundamental question. Who wrote this verdict? Was this an intern that wasn't present in the case? Because it is impossible that 3 judges wrote that verdict. Impossible. Because there was a charge that the Attorney General brought. He said he wanted to, in the Kimsha case, he wasn't worried about the building permit. He wanted to deal with a contract that Chris had signed with my son. He wanted to deal with that. Wasn't even handled. Wasn't even handled. Check the verdict. It's not there.
Correct, yeah. No
this is a joke.
No mention at all.
This is a complete joke. That's why I feel reasonable confident that in Holland, it's going to be sent back. they're going to send back the case to the appellate court.
Mhm.
Because you can't come with this verdict with the evidence that was there and the procedures that you did not follow are going to put a tarnish on the judicial system. Because
Correct.
mistakes can be made, but
Right.
this is not a mistake. This is too much
Mhm.
of mistake and mistake and mistake and mistake
Right,
to say
right.
it's a mistake.
No, it's a decision. It's a choice.
And you want to say that there's some sort of intent with that decision.
Mhm.
That's how I feel.
Right, right. Mhm. So when we look at the fact in this case, like I said, it's a very technical case, and it can go above the heads of many people out there watching the show and trying to understand what we're talking about. It can indeed be very complex and difficult to understand. But trying to break it down, we have to explain the viewer that credible witnesses, and we're talking about SGs, we're talking about finance controllers, made statements on the record as to the process that was followed, that there was no indication of any type of wrongdoing, of any undue influence. At the end of the day, a minister's opinion, it's all about politics. A minister is appointed after a political election. So at the end of the day, politics plays a role on that level as well. So to disregard the statements of professional people within the civil service, SGs, department heads, and financial controllers, and just go with a minister's opinion, begs a lot of questions about indeed the fairness of a trial and indeed the unbiasedness. We also see the same thing happen with witnesses that made statements initial first, whether on due pressure or not, and then indeed at one point in time changed their statement and said, no, we did not say that, or we were pressured to make certain statements, even to the point, and this has been verified by my person in the documents based on the statements and the court records, that a judge says, he hear a witness say something, and based on that, he believed that what was said is true. While there's no concurrent evidence to that point, even the witness himself denied saying that. Lawyers present in a courtroom said they heard no such thing. The only two so-called witnesses to that effect is the court recorder and a judge. And basically the court recorder recorded because she heard the judge say it. So that's why I'm calling it circular reasoning. And we see this process throughout the documents that I've reviewed in this court case, to the point that when you attempt to interview these witnesses and cross-examine them, that you were blocked from doing that. And I can understand the frustration, Mr. Buncamper. I personally, like I said before, I would have flipped out. They would have to declare me a crazy man, because you basically trampling my fundamental rights to hear and cross-examine witnesses that make incriminating statements against me, and then you tell me I can't interview them, I can't cross-examine them. That is, for me, a big red flag. And I try not to let my personal emotions play a role in my assessment, because at the end of the day, we have to look at this with objective eyes. But at the end of the day, I'm also a human being, I'm also a person, and I cannot, Mr. Buncamper, I cannot, and I want the viewers to understand, I cannot stand injustice. It's not in my nature. I abhor injustice, and when I see it, it makes me want to take action. And that's why today, we're doing this show, because this show is a part of the process that is ongoing, because the next step now is to put this, all this information, what I've gathered, into at least 3 or 4 articles, a series of 3 or 4 articles highlighting the different aspects of this case, from the fundamental point of view, from the human rights point of view, and from the procedural point of view in terms of judicial process. At the end of the day, it's not about the person involved. I know you well, so it's a type of biasness in that sense, because I know you, I can't deny, I know you, we grew up together playing ball in Cul-de-sac, Saunders. I can't say I didn't know you. We always joke saying your nickname Toncho was because they always wanted to to tone it down. Your mouth is big. Als wij de saying dat ze willen dat een toontje lager zingt. So that seems to be the case with your prosecution. But at the end of the day, you know, it's not about a person. And I want the viewers to understand that it's not about a person. At the end of the day, we got to believe and trust in a system that whether we're innocent or not, we go into a system where we're being charged with certain allegations, crimes, whatnot. You know, we have to believe that the system and the process that we go through is a fair process, is an unbiased process, and that when we come in front of a judge in a courtroom, that we have to believe that that judge sitting on that bench is indeed someone who's going to give an impartial verdict as to the outcome of that case. And when you see in documents, in evidence, that is not the case, and there are a lot of questions being posed and red flags being hoisted in this process, you know, you have to stop for a minute and say, hey, whoa, something is not right here. How is this possible, and why is it happening? And we need to highlight that. I am not on a witch hunt. I want the viewers to really understand I'm not on a witch hunt. I am wanting on a level for us to review the situation. I can corroborate what Mr. Buncamper is saying. So at the end of the day, it's up to the viewers to draw their own conclusion. Is this process, has it been a fair process? I would beg to differ. And I know you can talk for hours on that aspect. And I know we can continue for hours talking about this case. You have talked many Mondays about it, indeed. But unfortunately, we only have more than an hour, more or less. We're almost about to wrap it up. But I indeed see that there's no questions from our viewers. Like I said, it's a very highly technical topic. Technical to the point that if you see that even the Ombudsman, human rights or constitutional experts, legal experts, people that defend human rights in Europe have weighed into this case. Even one of our readers asked me, who are these experts that have been consulted? You know, I leave it up to you whether you want to call out their name or not, but at the end of the day, going forward into Cassati, into the Supreme Court, I am certain that you will be calling some of these experts to render also their opinions on this case matter.
Yeah. Well,
so
you
indeed,
know, my lawyer is busy with everything. And
right.
I don't want to talk on what has to come, because I don't want that to be played out in the media. I think what I have done now, the court case is over in St. Martin. But I think it's only fair for me to now open my mouth. And because remember, when the verdict came out, I could have started crying, oh, cry foul, cry this. They're going to say, yeah, because you're in politics and there's election. So I waited my time. They even used the verdict to say, I can't take my seat. Something that I told them, I will challenge this time I go back into Parliament. If I go back into Parliament and they come with this, I will challenge it in courts, because there are treaties that telling them you can't do that, what you're doing.
Correct.
You know, and these are the things that I say. If we, because we all saying, oh, we country this. I say we are a territory. I don't want to use the word country. I'm very cautious with that. Because
we've had that discussion in a previous show. Indeed, what is our status with him?
I know, for sure. And I want to stand with a section of territory for now, because I can't find myself in the country neither. We are this, yet we don't have the autonomy that we're supposed to have as a country. When if you don't do this, I'm doing it for you. But then I'm not autonomous. Then I'm still subject to you. You know, but again, for a different time, that would be a nice discussion. Terrence, I know time is running on us, so the one thing I want to honestly do, and I want to do it publicly, I really want to thank you on behalf of my family and me. I think tonight, this show is a revelation for a lot of people in St. Martin and those in the Netherlands that always had an opinion of me in a certain way. And tonight, You are somebody, you write for Koningsrijksrelatie, Kadusha. So people look up and respect your work. And that's why this interview was so important for me, because once it gets the attention in the right places, people will start knocking on doors and say, listen, you're going to have to explain me this a little better, what you did here. And that's what it's about, because that's the onlyest way you can bring a change in the justice. Again, not because somebody made a mistake, you have to cover the mistake, fix the mistake.
Correct.
If you don't do that, then you don't have justice.
Correct.
And that's the bottom line.
That's the bottom line.
You can't be fighting people, hoping for them to run out of money so that they take the jail sentence. If they're innocent, then prove them so and let them go. But no, we are guilty until we prove ourselves. We got to prove we're innocent, you know. It isn't that the prosecutor has to prove that you're guilty, you know. We have to go to courts and beg judges and show them all kind of things to say, I didn't do this. Instead of the prosecutor showing that you did it.
Right.
You saw the evidence.
Without
There's
any
no
doubt.
way with the evidence that you saw, the witness statements that you saw, that a judge in his right mind could have said, I agree with the prosecutor's Buncamper. Yeah, he did all these things. Impossible.
Right.
It just wasn't there. And that's what's hurtful. Because you know, I have a life to live too. I don't enjoy 14 years blowing all my savings on fighting court cases because somebody feel that my mouth too big or I push off somebody too hard, you know, and those type of things. Because you take everything that I have, I worked for. I didn't steal it from nobody. I didn't take nothing from nobody. So to come and tell me I do A, B, C, D, and you have no evidence, but you convict me for it, that is a slap in my face. That is destroying my name, my integrity, and most of all, you're destroying the trust that people have put in justice. Because, mind you, I am not the onlyest one that's going through this, but I am one of them that has been there the longest.
Yeah, I'm very vocal.
So when I won my case, they came right back at me because they didn't want to lose. They can't afford to lose.
Right. And that is why, indeed, like I keep reiterating during the show tonight, you know, it's not a witch hunt that we're having this show far. It is indeed to highlight certain aspects of the judicial system and to point out where, indeed, mistakes have been made. And, indeed, hopefully, that we learn from these mistakes, that the authorities and the powers that be take these aspects into serious consideration and indeed address these issues on the level that it needs to be addressed on. Because I'm certain, you know, there are governing bodies within the judicial branch to address these issues, you know, and at the end of the day, even the lawyers themselves have to be able to have that ability as a recourse to come to these bodies and address these issues as well, because they're the ones confronted. They're on the front line of these issues. And it cannot be that a lawyer would be fearful of taking certain action because he's afraid that then that he himself might become a target and become or be investigated or be charged with whatever issues they would want to lay on his shoulders as well.
You said it yourself. Your own legal mind said, don't do this thing. Be careful because they might come for you. But you know, I want to say that justice has realized. I honestly believe they have realized that the way things are going, they can't continue doing it.
Correct.
And now they want to come with a 3-man justice system for any punishment that's above a year. There's a reason for that in first instance, that you bring three judges one time, because this craziness of trying to keep a 95% conviction rate like they have in the Netherlands. In the Netherlands, before prosecutors bring something to courts, is because they got evidence coming out the gazoos.
Right.
They ain't taking no chance to go to courts to lose. So their system is well balanced. even
Right.
though they do break the rules too, because there is
Of
the
course.
listing when they shouldn't be listing.
We got books
They really want
covering
to
all those
read it.
cases.
And all were thrown out.
Yeah.
All of them were thrown out. But here, they go into courts, no matter what, because they're not held accountable for anything that happens.
Correct.
No matter how bad it is. The country paying. That's it. And I'm saying that accountability has to be reviewed. And a way they are trying to cover that up is by saying, you know what, instead of one judge, we can put 3 judges. But the money.
Well, I hope that development also entails of them allocating funds and resources to train our own local people to be lawyers, to be prosecutors, and to be judges. Because indeed, for us as a country, you call it a territory, I still like to use the word country because that is my aspiration for us as an island territory, that we become a country eventually. And the process that is not going to take 1 to 3 years. It's going to take years, if not decades, before we reach that stage. But in that process, there should also be the same way they can allocate millions to investigate undermining and links with the politicians above the world and the underworld and all this good stuff. They can also allocate resources to train, educate our own human capital in the field of judicial affairs in terms of creating lawyers, creating prosecutors, and creating judges. We need to have our own people also sit on that same bench. At least if they're going to have 3 judges, I want to see at least one of them looking like us.
Yeah.
if you understand what I'm saying.
Agree with you.
And you see at least 1 or 2 of them being our own people, because then you know that they will understand our system, understand our culture, understand us as a people and where we're coming from.
I agree, because they don't have to come here then and go through a whole rigorous training of acclimatization, not only with the heat, but with the people they're dealing with. That's why very often there is asked to send judges from Rotterdam, Amsterdam, Utrecht, because they bounced up on Antillians before. So they know how we think, how we behave,
mindset,
Yeah.
Correct.
No. I agree with you on that. But like I said, I think it was Richard Gibson Sr. had started off the whole law program to go study for justice, study for judge, study for prosecutor. I think we have one prosecutor came back that has roots from the island, and again, it's nothing against anybody. But my problem is, if we talk injustice, then let us talk justice. Let us not talk, oh, I got to fix that for he, or I got to cover this for that one. That can't be justice. And that's where it went wrong in my whole case. It became a cover-up for a mistake that was made. And
unfortunately.
Yes.
Unfortunately. Yes. Well, let's hope now that this show tonight uncover that cover-up, because we need to highlight and expose these issues. We need to have impartial minds and review bodies looking at this particular case. Of course, you're going to go into cassation, and that is the ultimate body that has to review your court case. And I do wish you much success. I wish you God's strength for you yourself personally, for your family. I know you have a lot of family watching the show tonight. I give them all of God's blessing, and I hope indeed that we can one day see an outcome that is across the board in the benefit of everyone involved. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank Mr. Buncamper for his presence tonight on this show. It's a very interesting show. It will be stored on YouTube. You can go back and watch the recording. So indeed, I expect to see a lot of views going forward the coming days. I wish everyone indeed a good night, and I thank you all for watching the show tonight. Bye-bye.
Thanks, sir.
The slogan of StMartinNews.com is news, views, reviews, and interviews. StMartinNews.com is always on point with editorials and opinion pieces. StMartinNews.com is the best in political analysis, court cases, and investigative reporting. We tell it like it is. StMartinNews.com is the only news site to bring the news directly to you via email. Register today at StMartinNews.com for your free subscription to the daily newsletter and read the news on your smartphone, tablet, and desktop computer. Because we do things and view things differently at stmartinnews.com, support our work and buy a year subscription for only $75 per year. stmartinnews.com for news, views, reviews, and interviews. Subscribe today. We will bring you the news faster than Facebook.